State lawmakers are considering a change to New York's drug laws. More offenders would get probation and treatment instead of time behind bars. Would you vote for that? The call starts now. Thanks for joining the call, the first interactive newscast where you tell us what's news. I'm John Schumo. Your top stories from NY1.com coming up. It seems like every year state lawmakers talk about reforming the Rockefeller Drug Laws, but this year, with Democrats in charge of both houses and the governor's mansion, it might actually happen. About 2 hours ago, the Assembly overwhelmingly passed legislation that would allow judges to sentence nonviolent drug offenders to probation or treatment programs instead of mandatory prison time. But supporters of the existing drug laws argue the tough laws help prevent crime and put away gang members. Do you support treatment and probation instead of prison time for nonviolent drug offenders, or do you agree with those who say strict penalties deter drug use and sales? A man who did time under the Rockefeller Drug Laws will be here to take your comments and questions. So call right now to share your opinion. The toll-free number is 866-NY1-TALK. You could also email the call at ny1.com. If you email, please include your first name and neighborhood. Here is tonight's Snap Poll, so grab your remote control. If it has A, B, and C buttons and you have Time Warner digital cable, you have 2 minutes to finish this sentence. New York's drug laws are, select A for too harsh, B for too lenient, and C if they're just right. We'll have your unscientific results in a few minutes. Right now, your top stories. In a belated effort to comply with federal guidelines, the Board of Elections holds a public hearing on new voting machines. This is your top story. The BOE invited New Yorkers to check out 2 new voting options, sound off on the systems, and compare them to the traditional lever machine. BOE officials are unsure if they will be able to implement the new machines by the fall primaries because they have to wait for government certification. After the contentious 2000 presidential election, Congress mandated all states modernize their voting systems. Story 2 is your topic. It's an annual Albany ritual. Tonight, the State Assembly passed a bill reforming the state's drug laws with a vote of 96 to 46. And this year, the newly Democratic Senate might play along. A vote could happen there as early as tomorrow. The legislation would eliminate minimum required prison terms for some drug-related felonies and allow first-time offenders to be sentenced to treatment programs. The 1993 drug laws mandated a sentence of 15 years to life in prison for possessing 2 ounces or selling 1 ounce of narcotics. That mandatory sentence was slashed to 8 years under Governor Pataki, but many argue low-level offenders should be treated for their addictions instead of being sent upstate with violent criminals on the taxpayer's dime. What do you say? Do you agree, or do you think the strict laws are a good deterrent? Join the conversation at 866-NY1-TALK. Your third story tonight, the city says the homeless population is plummeting, but advocates are questioning the math. The Department of Homeless Services says volunteers counted 30% fewer homeless people this year than they did last year. Officials say that's about 2,300 people live on the streets right now, about half as many as 4 years ago. The Coalition for the Homeless questions the city's system of counting, saying the results aren't what they observe every day. Those are your top 3 stories from the Viewer Rundown on NY1.com. Senior producer Susanna Hegner joins us from the control room with a quick look at some of the other stories of the day. Susanna, would you say lever or lever? Pull the lever, pull the lever. I guess it depends on where you're from.
Lever sounds like that brand of soap to me.
Yeah.
I hate to say this, but our very astute intern, Eliza, noticed that you accidentally said 1993 instead of 1973.
73 was the script. Why I said 93?
Yeah.
It's been a long day.
I know that you know that, but anyway, we don't want any experts calling to tell us we got it wrong.
Appreciate it.
But thank you, Eliza, for catching that.
And tell her she's fired.
And you're fired. She's crying now. Great.
She's not fired.
Story 5, A-Rod is getting his hip examined because he has a cyst there.
I wonder why there's a cyst.
I don't know.
We'll find out.
Let's see. Maybe he should have it lanced.
Right.
And so that was story 5. Story 6, we should report because all week we've been talking about the Dow plummeting. Well, today it closed 150 points higher. So a little good news on the economy.
And let's hope it's the start of something.
Exactly. Let's hope.
Anything else?
And the Associated Press is reporting that Barbara Bush, the former First Lady, had successful open heart surgery. I didn't know she was going in for it, but
That crossed the Associated Press wire just about 5 or 6 minutes ago, right when the show started.
breaking news.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
Okay. Susanna, thank you. If you're curious, you can see the complete viewer rundown on our webpage, ny1.com/thecall, right after the show. Take a break here from you next. Should state lawmakers change the state drug laws? Rock in Mariners Harbor thinks so. He emailed us earlier to say, quote, jail time is too severe for people who obviously need counseling and supervised medication. But Liz in Sunnyside writes, keep the laws regarding drug laws right where they are, but increase the amount of time for homicide, negligent homicide, and manslaughter. It should not be possible to spend more time in prison for selling weed than for killing someone. What do you say? A drug reform activist will join me next to take your phone calls and emails on The Call.
Over the nearly 36 years since their enactment, the Rockefeller Drug Laws have cost New York State's taxpayers hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, to incarcerate thousands of low-level, nonviolent drug offenders. That has been and continues to be an economic failure, a criminal justice failure, a public health failure, a family and community disaster.
Every New Yorker has an opinion. We want to know yours. Call 1-866-NY1-TALK or email the call at ny1.com. New York One Snap Poll is sponsored by your local Tri-State BMW Center. Visit tristatebmw.com to take advantage of BMW's special lease and finance offers.
Hi everyone, I'm journalist Karen Bryant, here today to ask one simple question. How has Cindy Crawford, the world's most famous supermodel, managed to stay so young looking for so long?
Cindy looks amazing, and for 41 she has barely any wrinkles, fine lines. Her skin looks great.
How does she do it? The secret to Cindy's ageless skin is renowned French anti-aging specialist Dr. Jean-Louis Sabag, the man Allure magazine calls the youth guru.
He's really super exclusive. He's amazing. I started going to him when I was 28, and I saw immediate results.
Now, at Cindy's request, Dr. Sabag has combined his powerful serums into an anti-aging system called Meaningful Beauty.
I put these creams on my face, and my skin looks different. My skin looks healthier. My skin looks younger.
Seeing is believing. You have to experience Cindy's secret to understand its power. And we've made it easy. Normally $119, but save with this DirecTV offer and pay just $29.95 while supplies last.
Meaningful Beauty is like a facelift in a bottle. It's absolutely amazing.
Dr. Sabag's secret lies in the south of France. A rare melon discovered with super antioxidants that keep this remarkable melon youthful while an ordinary melon decays.
There's no doubt in my mind that that melon extract works. And thank God Cindy talked Dr. Sabag into doing this.
Order in the next 4 minutes and we'll add Dr. Sabag's dazzling new glowing serum, a breakthrough formula Dr. Sabag normally reserves for his exclusive celebrity clientele.
I use the glowing serum probably more than I should, but I'm addicted to it.
I get asked constantly from people, what do I use? I use Meaningful Beauty, that's all I use.
Call right now and get Cindy's secret to ageless skin. You'll be amazed. Call 1-800-421-8139.
I did deserve some form of punishment. I'm not gonna go as far. I knew what the area was. I knew what he was doing. But I didn't sell any drugs to anybody. I didn't possess any drugs on my person. I remember the judge telling me, you know, Mr. Sanchez, I don't want to give you this sentence, but I have to. It's the law. It's about time that they give it the just look that it deserves, and they change these laws. They're outdated. They're old. They're one-sided, they're draconian.
Welcome back to the call. Instead of a minimum prison sentence, state lawmakers are debating whether to allow judges the option of sentencing nonviolent drug offenders to probation and treatment. Critics say strict laws help reduce crime. What do you say? Do you support treatment and probation instead of prison time for nonviolent drug offenders? Call us toll-free at 866-NY1-TALK to join the conversation, or email the call at ny1.com. If you email, please include your first name and neighborhood. Joining me tonight is Anthony Papa, an activist with the Drug Policy Alliance. He was sentenced to 15 to life for a first-time nonviolent drug offense and is here to tell his story. Tony, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate your time. Let us hear your story. Why were you sentenced to 15 years?
In 1985, I made the biggest mistake I could make in my life. I got involved with drug activity. I bowled on a team in Yonkers, New York. I kept coming late to the league, and my car kept breaking down. A teammate said, "Why don't you fix it?" and said, "I don't have the money." So, "You want to make some money?" I said, what do I have to do? He said, "All you got to do is bring this package up from the Bronx to Mount Vernon, New York, and you make a fast $500. So at first I said no because I knew he was involved with drug activity. But then, like the carrot dangling on the string, things got desperate, and when you get desperate, you do stupid things. And I wound up bringing that package up to Mount Vernon, and I walked into a police sting operation. 20 cops came out of nowhere, and I was placed under arrest. The individual was working for the police. He had 3 sealed indictments. The more people he pulled in, the less time he got. That's how I got involved. I did everything I could do wrong, and the judge sentenced me to 2 15-year-to-life terms for a first-time nonviolent drug offense.
That was your first and only criminal offense?
Never arrested before. First-time nonviolent offender. Since I was a first-time nonviolent offender, the judge gave me a break and ran the 2 sentences together, and I did 1 15-to-life sentence.
How many people did you encounter in prison with similar stories?
Hundreds. I actually became a jailhouse attorney. I worked in the law library in Sing Sing Correctional Facility in Austin, New York. I handled hundreds and hundreds of cases. And most of the time, I came across people who were nonviolent drug offenders, many with substance abuse problems. And this is the reason why we need to change the way we treat drug offenders, especially people with drug problems, as a medical problem as opposed to a punitive one.
Quickly on your story, you discovered painting, and then someone discovered you, and then Governor Pataki got wind of your story, which is why you got out earlier than you were sentenced to.
Right. In 1988, I was sitting in my cell one night, picked up a mirror, looked in the mirror, saw an individual who's going to spend the most productive years of his life in a cage, picked up a canvas, painted a self-portrait. 7 years later, wound up at the Whitney Museum of American Art. I got a lot of exposure on my case, and about 2 years later, Governor Pataki granted me executive clemency. But when I came out, I became an activist because I wanted to try to change these laws, the laws that put me in prison for 15 to life. Now, maybe I deserve some time, but not a 15-to-life sentence. It was a waste of tax dollars, a waste of money that could be better spent on needy communities.
Tony, let's go to the phones, hear what our fellow New Yorkers have to say. Let's see, we start off with Kurt, who is in Murray Hill. Kurt, thanks for calling in. Tell me, do you support treatment and probation instead of prison time for nonviolent drug offenders? What do you say tonight, Kurt?
Yes, I definitely do support treatment. I feel that as someone who was born and raised in New York, I have seen that the harsh penalties due to that statute have led to several negative effects. First of all, it's overcrowded the jails and prisons to a bursting point. Secondly, it's made drug-dependent and drug-addicted offenders harder and more educated about how to commit crimes to support their habits. In addition to that, that has created a serious recidivist problem where they're in and out of jail all the time. And third, it's choked up the courts with the attendant, severe burdens on the taxpayer. I think that it was an enormous mistake and that it's about time that they repeal these harsh penalties. The only people who should get harsh penalties, as far as I'm concerned, are drug dealers at a certain level who are dealing in things like cocaine, heroin, crack, and the worst of all the drugs. People who are users are sick people, and they need to be treated. If we don't treat them, we are simply warehousing them. That's
Kurt,
how I feel about it.
Kurt, thanks for your phone call tonight. Tony, there are, the critics of the reform will say, hey, in a couple of years ago when they reformed the laws, that effectively ended the stiff sentencing, and it's good for crime, a good crime deterrent. to keep the laws strict. That's the counter argument. What do you say in response to that?
Well, I say this, that at a time where we're having a budget crisis in New York State, since we had 2 reforms in 2004, 2005, it saved the state of New York almost $100 million since that time these reforms were made. I think treatment is the way to go. I think we need a new direction, and the new Assembly bill that passed tonight deals with that in that capacity. They want to solve the core of the problem, which are crimes that are committed because of drug addictions. And they want to solve it by making treatment available for these individuals. And I think it's a great bill, and I'm hoping it's going to pass.
Here's an email from the Bugler from Brooklyn. For nonviolent drug crimes, mandatory sentencing is ridiculous. Someone can spend less time in jail for rape or murder than someone caught with drugs. Needs to be decided on a case-by-case basis, and probation and treatment should be the first step. If caught again, some kind of sentence perhaps, but not mandatory 14 or 18 years. It is insane, writes the Bugler. But here's Michelle from Great Kills. It says, our drug laws need to remain strict. As it is, the city is overrun with drugs and addicts. Most of those who come out of jail go back in, even though they were receiving counseling. Does the city, in this case the state, feel that being more lenient will help? I don't think so, writes Michelle from Great Kills. A lot of emails coming in on both sides of this issue. We're here with Anthony Papa, an activist with the Drug Policy Alliance, but we do need to take a quick break. We'll have more of your thoughts at home, also the results of our SNAP poll coming up when the call continues. Stay with us.
The Rockefeller Drug Laws, we did have an epidemic of drug use. Now, whether there's any connection between the two, I'll leave that to the criminologists. Fortunately, I think one of the reasons that we have been successful in terms of reducing crime is that there is less use today, for example, of something like crack. You know, all of these things, there are so many different factors, it's really hard to say one thing versus another.
If you've got something to say, share your opinion on The Call, 1-866-NY1-TALK, or email thecall@ny1.com.
The Willens and Baker Report.
Divorce is almost never easy, but a majority can be resolved without you appearing in court. Getting early legal advice is critical. Call 1-800-DIVORCE.
I called the number and they handled everything, and I'm really happy with the way it all worked out.
Willens and Baker has handled divorce and family court matters for 35 years, most on a flat fee basis that relieves pressure when you need it most. Call 1-800-DIVORCE. Know your rights, know your costs. For Willens and Baker, I'm John Willen.
I really got sick and tired of every day when I met somebody. They would look at the top of my head, and then they'd look me in the face.
I think my hair looks better now than it did when I was in my 20s.
Hey, some people are beautiful bald, but it wasn't for me.
I feel great about myself now. I look the way I think I'm supposed to look.
It was like a dream come true for me because I wanted my own hair back.
The Bosley treatment's absolutely exceeded my expectations, no question about it.
This is all me, so I'm thrilled.
I finally enjoy getting a haircut.
Now that I see the results, I wish I would have done it 4 or 5 years sooner.
I'm really excited about having my hair back.
When it comes to going bald, you now have a choice. To find out more about this clinically proven permanent hair loss solution from Bosley, call to receive this free guidebook, medical report, and DVD.
This is the only permanent solution to hair loss.
Choose to do something about your hair loss.
Call 1-800-935-4469. That's 1-800-935-4469, or go online to bosley.com today.
For 125 years, the Metropolitan Opera has been the jewel in New York's cultural crown. In recognition of this musical milestone, New York One takes a look back at its rich history, its very vibrant present, and the people who are planning its future. The Metropolitan Opera, 125 years and counting. 5-part series starts Monday, March 9th, only on New York One. Sponsored by SearchMercedes.com.
Our primary concern is going up the ladder and getting the people who are obviously the higher level dealers. But that's not to say that we should tolerate the people who are selling on the corners of our streets. My community won't tolerate that. And when you write a law that addresses just the needs of those who are being arrested for crimes that they're not even saying they're not guilty of, and not addressing the needs of the 90+% of the population who's going to work and to church and to play in the community, then your law is not appropriate.
Welcome back to the call. State lawmakers are debating changes to the Rockefeller Drug Laws to give judges more discretion in sentencing nonviolent offenders. In tonight's Snap poll, we asked what you think about the state's drug laws. Here are your unscientific results. 53% of those who responded say they're currently too harsh. 30% say they're too lenient. 17% say they're just right. Thanks to our digital subscribers, have your remote control ready at the start of each show. My guest is Anthony Papa with the Drug Policy Alliance. Tony, let's go right back to the phones. Continue the conversation with our fellow New Yorkers. Ralph is in the West Village. Ralph, are you in favor of stricter laws?
In favor, absolutely. D.A. Johnson just summed it up best. Why should we, 10% of the population, laws shouldn't be written for them. The inner city was destroyed by first the heroin in the 60s and 70s, then the crack in the 80s. We're thankful and lucky that people don't do crack in the numbers that they were doing in the 80s. There hasn't been a drug that come along. If crystal meth comes along and gets popular, what are we going to do?
Well, Ralph, you're here with Anthony, who is saying that treatment works for first-time offenders, and sending somebody off to prison is just not going to solve the problem long-term. It might solve it short-term, but not long-term.
And when you have the Rockefeller Drug Laws, we're talking about mandatory minimum sentencing, that judges don't have discretion to look at the totality of facts. This is why this Assembly bill that was passed today, and if it comes into law, is a great bill because it gives judges discretion to look at totality of facts. Little small-time offenders, people with substance abuse problems, will go to treatment instead of doing a long amount of time in jail, like myself.
What do you consider a nonviolent crime?
A nonviolent crime is a drug sale with no violence involved.
Ralph from the West Village. Ralph, thanks for the phone call and that perspective. Look, some people say, hey, if the city's getting safer, maybe the law, the strict law, is acting as a deterrent. You've heard it before.
No, they're entitled to their own opinion.
Exactly.
But I'm telling you the facts. I've been through this. I've been inside. I've been outside. I'm an activist. I work for a leading organization in the United States, Drug Policy Alliance. We believe in treatment instead of incarceration. We have a pilot program. Actually, California, Prop 215. Medical marijuana. Prop 36 deals with treatment instead of incarceration, saved the state of California billions of dollars and tens and thousands of lives. So it does work, and we're trying to make that same type of deal here in New York State, where people with medical problems, drug problems, are treated as a medical problem, not a punitive problem.
Let's go back to the phones. Joe is in Woodstock, New York, watching us upstate tonight. Joe, how are you?
How you doing?
Okay, Joe, so let's hear your opinion. Go ahead.
Well, I think the Rockefeller laws are ridiculous. I think they're much too harsh, and we have so many people in jail for marijuana, which is basically a harmless thing, and they're given very hard sentences to marijuana. Everybody thinks they're not given big sentences, but they're given very big sentences to marijuana users, and I don't want my taxes going to that.
Joe from Woodstock says reform the law. Let's go to Queens, Queens Village specifically. Pedro is up next and joins the call. Pedro, you're hearing the lawmakers debate it. What are your thoughts on this issue? Go ahead, Pedro.
Hello?
Yeah, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I just feel that, like everybody else, it's too harsh. The taxpayer dollars is being used, to be sending people upstate, and when you could take that money and just put it into the hospitals and schools that they shutting down.
Right.
And I don't think, it makes any sense. They're spending everybody's money. And, I think that they should just put everybody in programs that be selling drugs, the nonviolent guys. Like me, for example, I did time before for the same thing, and my crime was nonviolent, and they gave me a 2.5 to 5.
Did you serve all of it?
Actually, yeah, I served 3 years and 8 months out of that, and I had good behavior in there. And they just, they hit me at the parole board. And this was a nonviolent crime.
Pedro from Queens Village. Pedro, thanks for sharing your perspective on this. Here's an email from Glenn from Brooklyn. It's about time that we see the courage it takes to get rid of the Rockefeller drug laws. Simply put, they don't work. Community-based treatment works, costs less, and does not diminish public safety, writes Glenn from Brooklyn. Let's see. Let's go back to the phones. Randy's in the West Village. Randy, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank
Okay.
you very much, and it's a good show. And Tony, I know his story. I work with Tony. I I've chronicled cases of the Rockefeller Drug Laws for the last 11 years, and I can tell you that I have yet to see, and I've chronicled over 2,000 cases, any in prison under these laws. The district attorneys are going to come out and say that we're tying their hands and that they're fighting drugs and they're putting away kingpins. It's simply not true. This is a complete lie to maintain their power. These laws are racist, they're draconian, target minorities, and they have absolutely nothing to do with stopping drugs in this city.
Randy, I'll ask you this question. What then is the effective answer to this as far as from a legal perspective? What should the law be then if you're not obviously pleased or you don't think that a minimum prison sentence works? Is it purely up to the judge? Is it judge discretion for nonviolent?
Well, first of all, yes, and that's another question, because the judges in this city and in the state, particularly in Manhattan, these judges are selected by the district attorney. Most of the judges that go through the system to the court of claims are former assistant district attorneys. So I don't know what they're griping about, because they're going to be a judge. There's going to be a judge that is a district attorney. So, they're going to get their way when it comes to sentencing.
Right.
Randy, I want to say thanks, and Tony, you want to say something?
Well, Randy makes a good point. These laws, people who commit crimes, drug law crimes, they're not going to get probation and treatment if they commit a harsh crime. They're still going to do time. These laws...
And you say they should do time.
Yeah, well, they should. I mean, if you've got a lot of weight involved, you're a Colombian drug dealer, you should do some time. But people with substance abuse problems, they flood these prisons. I was in Sing Sing prison for 12 years. I never met a kingpin in prison. I met people with substance abuse problems, people that needed treatment instead of being incarcerated. This is why this new bill that came out is a good bill, and I'm hoping it passed, because something is really wrong with a system that locks people up like myself for 15 years to life for first-time nonviolent drug offense.
Tony, what are you up to now, and what's going on with the book?
My book, 15 to Life, is going to be a feature film hopefully soon. People could go to my website, 15tolife.com, to see the book, to see my art. You could go to drugpolicy.org to read about the issues that I'm involved with in the drug war in the United States, and read about the Rockefeller Drug Laws. And Randy and I founded the Mothers of the New York Disappeared. It's a nice website, consular.org. You go there too and see
Anthony Papa from the Drug Policy Alliance. I want to appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks very much.
That's all the time we have for now. If I didn't read your email on the air, you can read it online at ny1.com. Just look for the link for our blog. We'll have Tony's website up there as well for your information. I'm John Schumer, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Bathroom.